Hi everyone. At last the black currants were ready to pick, so I have picked them and made my first batch of black currant jam, which I'm very satisfied with. I guess in the clips that follow I don't actually taste it, but that bottle that's only about 3/4 full, I refrigerated it and I've been using it the last 2 or 3 mornings for breakfast. They're very good. And then we'll take a look around at some of the things that are growing in the greenhouse and out in the garden, including some of the grapes that are starting to ripen. And of course, I've got to close this off once again with another look at my little chickens here, the Chantecler chicks, which are 16 days old today and have got most of their wing feathers and tail feathers in now, and they're getting a little bit bigger. They're also getting a lot more confident. They leave the mother hen and go off exploring on their own, run back to see where she's at every once in a while, but they're not quite as dependent as they used to be.
Well, I think it's time to harvest the black currants. I've been trying to find a recipe that I could use to make a small amount of jam, because I don't have a great deal of fruit here. I've got 4 bushes with, I don't know, a little bit on each one anyway. They look very good. They're nice and ripe. I just located a recipe online, which is a very simple recipe. It has 3 ingredients. It's got the black currant, sugar, and water. And the recipe itself is for 1 pound of the fruit. Well, I think with this simple recipe, if I don't get 1 pound of the fruit, it will be quite easy to recalculate the amount of sugar, and really the amount of water doesn't matter, because you just keep simmering it down until you have a thick jam before you bottle it. So I'll show you what I get after I pick these. Well, that's my little harvest, stems and all. I now have to sit down and go through it and pick the individual currants off the little stems. It's fairly heavy. I don't think there's 1 pound there, but I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, once I get the stems all off of it. Well, I'm surprised. I just finished picking them over and washing them. I guess I still see a few small stems in there I'll have to pick out. But I've got more fruit than I thought I had. Almost 1 pound 6 ounces. 1 pound 5.95 ounces according to the scale there. So I'll have to add a little extra sugar, I guess, do some calculating here. But about now to try making the jam anyway. Well, the next stage is to add 1.5 cups of water to the berries in a heavy bottomed pan. I use a small pressure cooker, because not using it as a pressure cooker, but because it has a nice heavy bottom. I prefer it to make most jams with. And you bring this to a boil and cook it for 15 to 20 minutes until the berries are tender. So the heat is on under it. It just hasn't come to a boil yet, so we'll come back and have a look at that shortly. Well, it's been boiling away for about 15 minutes and has reduced quite a bit. Now you add the sugar. I've adjusted the amount of sugar because I have more berries than the recipe called for. Got about an additional 6 ounces of berries. And it says to stir until you've got the sugar dissolved. Then bring it back to a boil and continuing to boil until it has reduced and starts to form a jelly or a jam. 220 degrees Fahrenheit on a candy thermometer, and I just happen to have one, so that would be the easiest way, I guess, to tell when it's ready to put in the jars. I'm not sure how well that will show, but that's at the 220 mark, 220 Fahrenheit. So according to the instructions, that should solidify into jam once I bottle it. So I'm about to remove it from the heat, stir it some more, and skim off any foam that's on top before it goes in the bottles. Well, I have 3 pint jars ready because the original recipe is supposed to be for 2 pint jars, and I had some additional berries and added additional sugar. Probably the 3rd jar won't be full, but I'll can it anyway and put it in the refrigerator and use it first.
for one jar. The lid's been kept in boiling water so they'll seal properly. Now I'll come back and show you what I get when I finish filling the jars. Well, you can see or not, but this jar here, the last one, is only about 3/4 full. I'll can it just the same as the other ones, but I'll put it in the refrigerator and use it first because I'm not so sure that it would seal all that well. But it looks like it's going to work. I can show you what's in here. The remainder of it in the pot that I boiled it away in is turning into jam already. I can get that into sight there. So it looks like it's going to set up and become jam, hopefully. It doesn't taste bad already, but it has to, like any jams, once you get them jarred, they should be aged for a while. That improves them quite a bit. Now, the next step, I'm reading from the instructions here, trying to find out how long. It doesn't seem to say how long. Anyway, they should go in a hot water bath. I guess I'll do it for at least 10 to 15 minutes. I don't see in the instructions here where it tells me how long they should be in there, but anyway, I've made lots of jam before and didn't bother with the hot water bath part, and they're already quite hot, so I'll probably do it for about 15 minutes. I'll show you what they look like coming out. I will print the instructions below the video here. I've just carefully read them again, and they have omitted to say how long they should be in the hot water bath, so I really think 10 minutes is going to be more than enough. As soon as it comes back to a rolling boil. So 2.5 jars. I don't know, I've been 2 or 3 hours, I guess, picking the berries over, but black currant jelly or jam is my favorite. I've never been able to make my own before, so I'm hoping to see that this turns out really well. Thank you for watching. Well, they're just out of the hot water bath, and they were in there for 12, 13 minutes, I think, something like that anyway. Seems to have been adequate. I've already heard one of them click and seal. And the partial bottle is in the middle there now. It'll be interesting to watch that because that'll be one way of telling how the rest of the jam has solidified. Tip that over and hopefully it won't be too runny by this time tomorrow. Instructions say to put it on a dish towel, which I have done, and not to disturb them for 24 hours. Canning instructions always say that. I don't think I've ever waited the 24 hours, but I let it completely cool, so it will probably be tomorrow morning before I move them and put them in the basement to do their aging before I dare to open them and try it and see what it's like a little later on. Well, to finish this video off, I'll take a look around at some of the things that's happening in the gardens. And of course, the very last clip should be another look at the little Banty and her small flock of Chantecler chicks. This is just looking in the doorway at the hoop house, at the jungle. Things in there are really growing. I'm leaving the door open now. Lots of cucumber blossoms, and I want to make sure they get pollinated so that I can pickle some cucumbers. I've been worried about the cabbage moth, but I gave the brassica plants, which are off to the right, lower right there. Those are all the new ones that I planted a few weeks ago, transplanted a few weeks ago. I've been worried about the cabbage moth damage. I gave them a treatment of BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. The problem I've had with that in the past is out in the garden, every time it rains you have to reapply it. Well, it's not going to rain in the hoop house, so I'm hoping one application will do for quite a while, and as of right now, everything is looking quite well. I don't see where there's any great amount of damage. There's a few holes in leaves here and there. The unfortunate thing is the worm from the cabbage moth, the caterpillar, whatever, has to hatch and eat some of the leaf before the BT kills it. It doesn't kill on contact, it kills by ingesting
well, not poison, it's a bacillus, but a naturally occurring bacillus that's been concentrated. Anyway, let's take a look around in there at a few things. There isn't anything over in there to compare that to, but let me give you some idea. This is the kohlrabi that I've been forgetting to harvest, which has got to be picked today. It's the size of a very large grapefruit or a small melon of some sort. I think peeled and grated it'll still be good in coleslaw, and maybe this time I'll cook half of it to see what I think of cooked kohlrabi. I think my problem with strange-looking cauliflower and broccoli really was due to the heat. The heat of the summer. It's quite warm in here today. We had heavy rain all day yesterday, so it was extremely humid in here. I hope this lens isn't all fogged up. Anyway, the broccoli plants and the cauliflower plants that I transplanted in here a few weeks ago are growing much nicer. No broccoli or cauliflower yet, but particularly the cauliflower, the long leaves that should grow up so that the head of cauliflower is blanched, held out of the sun, that's happening this time. So I guess I've learned a lesson there. Next year when I plant brassicas in here, I'll wait until late July, third week of July or so, before I transplant anything in here, except for the kohlrabi, which certainly seems to do very well. Also, the cabbage plants that I put in here at the same time a few weeks back are starting to hit up, so it's looking hopeful for a nice fall harvest out of here. Well, hopefully you're seeing grapes in there somewhere. They are starting to turn purple without getting any great size to them. I can't get over in there to put a hand to show you the size, but those are not very large. Still, I would say smaller than your average marble. I don't know if they grow any more once they ripen or not, but there are many of these clusters all over the vine, so I'm hopeful of getting enough anyway to make a batch of grape jelly. Well, before leaving the hoopos, I'll show you the one surviving artichoke, which hasn't completely bloomed yet. It's pretty well opened up, almost looking dahlia-like at this time, but the actual thistle blossom hasn't come out yet. And I want to give you a look at something that's happening at the base here, if we can get down to it. Last winter and early spring, there were some little pups, or whatever you want to call them, small artichoke plants that came up around the base, but they seem to die back this summer. But now that this one larger one is being allowed to go to seed, they seem to be coming back again. So I don't know if there's any hope of getting an artichoke off of those before cold weather sets in this fall or not. We had heavy rain and high winds all last night, and I was expecting to come out and find the bean tower laying on its side with the bean plants pulled up by the roots, but it wasn't quite that dramatic. It had a little bit of a lean to it, sort of leaning toward me. I've straightened it up a bit since then, and it's done that a couple of times with minor winds, so maybe this thing will hold until I get some beans off of it. Beans have gone all the way to the top. There are still some that are only halfway up, but that's because they're the ones that were planted later. Lots of blossoms, and I've seen bees working in them this morning, so I'm starting to feel like there may be some beans. I've never grown tomatillas before, and I'm not quite sure what to do with them when they husks get full later this fall. Hopefully that's going to happen. All over this particular plant, which is, 3.5 feet tall and probably close to 3 feet wide, but kind of spidery looking in places. Anyway, all over there are now husks that are starting to fill out with the tomatillas inside. It's the first time I've ever grown them, so I guess I'm going to have to go online and find some salsa recipes or something to use them in. I'm getting the greatest kick out of what they're calling semi-vining winter squash. Sweet Mamas, I think the variety is. Lots of squash here, there, and everywhere, but the semi-vining thing, if you can see where that one's going, has gone over into a tree and is sort of going laterally through the forest there. And there's another one here that goes into this sea buckthorn and all the way up to the top. And I think I have counted 4 squash on that one, so I don't know if they will all develop or not, but the plants are growing incredibly anyway. I'll give you a look at what I've found so far as my largest squash. The one that you see in the top of that shot is the largest one that I've been able to find. There are many more that are on their way to getting almost up to that size.
You never know how much longer production is going to continue, though. When it starts getting cooler in the fall, a lot of the winter squash plants will start to die back, even though we haven't had frost. But I think I'm going to be very satisfied with the harvest anyway. It's looking good so far. Now, to close this thing off, I will give you a little look at the bantam with her little flock of Chanteclers. Thank you very much for watching. The little ones are 16 days old today. They're getting more feathers and also getting to be a lot more independent. They don't seem to have mother standing by at all times now. Quite often if I'm out here, one will come off and follow me around just to see what I'm doing.